Seth Rollins' injury was fake? Paul Heyman's master plan finally exposed. WWE fans, you've been played, and now the truth is out. In this explosive exposé, we break down the shocking theory behind Seth Rollins' knee injury and how it was all part of a sinister master plan orchestrated by none other than Paul Heyman himself. From backstage clues to on-screen slip-ups, we piece together the trail that WWE didn't want you to follow. Could this be the biggest work in recent WWE history? Under the blinding lights of WWE Saturday Night's main event, the cameras panned over a sea of shocked faces. Seth Rollins was down. He clutched his knee, grimacing in agony, writhing on the mat as medical staff rushed in. The commentary team sounded shaken, the arena hushed with concern, and social media erupted into chaos. The verdict seemed clear: a devastating knee injury, possibly an MCL tear, had taken out one of WWE's most iconic superstars. The timing was catastrophic. Just weeks before SummerSlam 2025, where Rollins was expected to headline. But what if it wasn't real? What if the man who built a career on burning things down had just pulled off his most diabolical trick yet? WWE fans, brace yourselves. What you witnessed that night might not have been an unfortunate accident, but a calculated illusion. A scripted deception buried so deep in plain sight that even the most seasoned fans, commentators, and wrestlers were fooled. The puppet master behind this alleged performance? None other than Paul Heyman, the architect of chaos. And his chosen co-conspirator? The visionary himself, Seth Rollins. What began as a tragic moment in the ring may have been the opening move in a master plan to manipulate perception, hijack sympathy, and rewrite the trajectory of SummerSlam 2025. Let's rewind. In the weeks leading up to the injury, something felt off. Rollins had been working closely with Heyman backstage after their on-screen alliance formed following Roman Reigns' dramatic departure from SmackDown. The two had suddenly become inseparable. At first, fans assumed it was just the start of a dominant new faction, with Heyman replacing Roman's guiding hand with Rollins' cunning intellect. But little did anyone know, a darker plot was already brewing behind closed doors. Multiple insiders have since come forward, suggesting that the injury segment was rehearsed days before the event under the strictest secrecy. WWE's medical team, which typically offers immediate public injury updates, went unusually quiet. There was no confirmed diagnosis. No MRI footage. No hospital photos. Just a vague social media post from WWE reading, Seth Rollins suffered an apparent knee injury. Further evaluations pending. For a superstar of Rollins' magnitude, the ambiguity was suspicious. And yet, most fans took the bait. They rallied behind him with hashtags, fan art, tribute videos, and emotional tweets that mourned the possibility of a ruined SummerSlam main event. But Paul Heyman wasn't mourning. He was smiling, silently, from the shadows. One WWE staffer, speaking under anonymity, claimed Heyman had been seen slipping out of the production meeting room shortly after the supposed injury segment was finalized. His face? Calm, unshaken, as if he already knew the ending of a play that had just begun. Sources backstage also allege that Rollins was walking perfectly fine once he disappeared from public view. One crew member reported seeing him joke around in catering just an hour after the match, with no brace, no ice packs, nothing. If this was an injury, it was a miracle recovery. Or more likely, a well-scripted illusion. The layers of deception began to pile up. During the post-match medical segment, the broadcast conveniently cut to a shaky handheld camera. A classic WWE trick to simulate authenticity. But eagle-eyed fans noticed a delay in the EMT's response. The stretcher arrived slowly. Rollins whispered something to the referee, then subtly adjusted the way he was holding his leg, switching knees for just a split second. It was a blink-and-you-miss-it moment, but one that raised red flags for sharp observers. Why would a real injury be treated with such inconsistent urgency? Why weren't updates delivered through WWE's usual injury protocol channels? The answer, in hindsight, is chillingly simple: because the injury wasn't real. And then came the Heyman silence. For a man known to spin narratives in seconds, Paul Heyman vanished from WWE programming for over a week following the incident. He offered no public comment, no tweets, no promos, nothing. Just dead air. That silence wasn't hesitation. It was strategy. Heyman knew that the silence would create vacuum, and in that vacuum, speculation would thrive. Fans began to mourn. Opponents cut promos in sympathy. Merchandise sales spiked. And in that storm of emotional confusion, Rollins' absence became a martyrdom. He wasn't just injured, he was canonized. And that's exactly what Heyman wanted. But why fake it? Why go through all this effort, this elaborate dance of deception? Because SummerSlam 2025 is bigger than a match, it's a battleground of legacy, power, and betrayal. With Roman Reigns absent, and Solo Sikoa rising as a new force of darkness, the landscape was ripe for a power shift. Paul Heyman, ever the strategist, saw an opportunity. He didn't just want Rollins to return. He wanted him to resurrect. To rise at SummerSlam like a phoenix from the ashes, a surprise nobody expected, shocking the crowd mid-match, and leaving his enemies in a state of disbelief. The goal? To weaponize sympathy into storyline momentum. To blindside Solo Sikoa. To remind the world that the architect still controls the blueprint of WWE's future. Behind the scenes, several cryptic hints suggest that the return is already in motion. WWE recently updated the SummerSlam event description on internal documents, removing the subject to change tag next to Seth Rollins' name. And at the most recent taping, sound engineers were overheard preparing Rollins' entrance theme visionary with adjusted pyrotechnic cues, set for a mid-show activation, not a coincidence, but preparation. More than one production assistant noticed Paul Heyman exiting a locked creative meeting late at night, smirking as he answered no questions. The smell of a setup hangs thick in the air. Then there's the social media breadcrumbs. Rollins has been posting cryptic black and white photos, often with captions referencing ashes, reconstruction, and the calm before the storm. These posts lack any direct reference to his injury, but their tone is unmistakable. He isn't mourning a setback, he's taunting his audience. Luring them into a false sense of closure, only to flip the narrative at the last second. And the fans, emotionally invested in the belief that their hero is down and out, are unknowingly becoming participants in Heyman's elaborate psychological game. One producer close to the storyline development team confirmed that there had been internal conversations about pulling off the greatest SummerSlam return of the decade. The plan was to manufacture sympathy, then flip it on its head. The insider added, Paul's fingerprints are all over this. It's the kind of long con he lives for. He wants the fans angry, heartbroken, then stunned. That's how you manipulate emotion and sell a legacy. In Paul Heyman's world, reality is clay, and he is the sculptor. The key to this entire operation is Rollins' performance. If the injury is fake, as mounting evidence suggests, it will go down as one of the most convincing acting jobs in WWE history. Every wince, every scream, every backstage absence, carefully measured to sell the story. Even his wife Becky Lynch played her part flawlessly, breaking character in a social media post with teary emojis and a caption reading, "We're stronger than this." Always. The couple knows the stakes. They know that in WWE, perception is everything. And if you control the perception, you control the story. That's what Heyman taught Roman Reigns. Now he's teaching Rollins. As the SummerSlam countdown continues, WWE has deliberately kept Rollins' name out of most promotional material. That's not an omission. That's theater. When the lights go down and Solo Sikoa stands tall in the center of the ring, expecting a straightforward match, imagine the eruption when Rollins' music hits, the crowd rising like a tidal wave, unaware they've been lied to for weeks. The moment would be seismic. A return like that would instantly overshadow any other headline. And more importantly, it would hand Heyman and Rollins the keys to WWE's future, a narrative they built from deception, illusion, and emotional control. What's even more compelling is what this master plan says about the evolving nature of wrestling storytelling. We're no longer just watching matches, we're watching long-form psychological warfare. Paul Heyman understands that in the modern age, kayfabe doesn't live in the ring anymore. It lives in tweets, hospital reports, fan-made theories, and Reddit forums. And he's using all of them like pieces on a chessboard. Every leak, every backstage witness, every cryptic post, deliberately placed to lead fans down a path he designed. And when that path suddenly ends at SummerSlam with a Rollins resurrection, the impact will be volcanic. So what now? If the injury was fake, and the clues are impossible to ignore, what does that mean for WWE's fans, who have poured out support, bought the merch, believed the story? It means we've been played. But not in vain. Because the art of wrestling has always been the art of manipulation. The best heels don't just hurt their opponents, they hurt your heart. The best storytellers don't just deliver shock, they deliver betrayal. And if this truly is Heyman's master plan, it will be remembered not as deception, but as brilliance. At this very moment, somewhere in a quiet production office or a dimly lit locker room, Paul Heyman is likely reviewing the final cues. Seth Rollins, the man who feigned fragility, is probably warming up for the performance of his life. And as SummerSlam approaches, one truth remains louder than any entrance music: WWE has always blurred the line between fiction and reality. But this time, they crossed it. But behind the spectacle of a potential surprise return lies an even deeper question: why? Why would Seth Rollins, a man who built his brand on honesty, passion, and grit, willingly become a co-conspirator in such an elaborate ruse? The answer lies not only in kayfabe storytelling but in the political power shifts rippling beneath WWE's surface. Since Roman Reigns' indefinite absence and the splintering of the bloodline, a vacuum of leadership has quietly emerged. Seth Rollins wasn't just nursing a storyline, he was biding time, waiting for the perfect moment to reclaim a throne that was once in Roman's shadow. And in Paul Heyman, he found not just a manager, but a tactician, a partner willing to risk everything to outplay an entire industry. Sources within WWE's creative team have confirmed that Heyman approached Rollins shortly after WrestleMania with a pitch that was as dangerous as it was theatrical. The idea? Fake an injury severe enough to remove Rollins from the active roster, lull the fans into mourning, and then return in biblical fashion at SummerSlam, unannounced, unstoppable, and utterly untouchable. It wasn't just about storyline heat. It was about controlling the entire emotional arc of the WWE Universe. "We don't want to just build sympathy," Heyman reportedly said during a closed-door creative session. "We want to build dependence. Let them think WWE is lost without him. Then bring him back when they need him the most." It was a psychological warfare plan years in the making. And Rollins, ever the master of reinvention, was more than willing to play his role. His track record speaks volumes. From the Shield's architect to the Monday Night Messiah, Rollins has evolved by embracing complexity. This time, the complexity was rooted in deception, and the stakes were higher than ever. The injury allowed him to disappear while Heyman orchestrated a sea of chaos. Roman's throne sat empty. Solo Sikoa rose through the ashes, declared himself tribal chief, and Paul Heyman, seemingly exiled, began puppeteering from the shadows. What the fans didn't know was that Rollins and Heyman were quietly building a war machine behind the curtain. While the WWE Universe wept for their fallen champion, Heyman was assembling allies, locking down promotional strategies, and quietly renegotiating SummerSlam's match order to allow for an unexpected insertion. Rollins, meanwhile, made sure to drop breadcrumbs, cryptic social posts, sporadic appearances in interviews where he avoided all injury-related questions, and even a brief podcast moment where he said, "Sometimes the best place to heal is out of sight." At the time, fans took that as an emotional comment. In hindsight, it was a signal. Even more shocking is how this entire orchestration seems to have caught WWE officials off guard. One high-ranking executive reportedly expressed frustration that the level of secrecy surrounding Rollins' condition was excessive even by WrestleMania standards. A second source claimed that only 3 people knew the full plan. Heyman, Rollins, and a senior creative producer with a direct line to Vince McMahon. Everyone else, agents, medical staff, camera operators, were fed just enough detail to stay believable, but not enough to spoil the reveal. And this brings us to the present. As SummerSlam 2025 looms, WWE programming has taken on an eerie tone. Segments feel like placeholders. Storylines hover without resolution. Solo Sikoa's dominance has gone unchecked. And in the middle of it all, Paul Heyman is silent, absent from Raw and SmackDown broadcasts but present in backstage meetings according to leaked reports. All signs point toward a detonation. And the fuse is Rollins. When that moment comes, when the lights go out mid-match, the first few notes of Burn It Down echo through the arena, and the crowd erupts with disbelief, WWE will have executed one of the most audacious angles in recent memory. Not just a fake injury. Not just a return. A resurrection. A messianic comeback designed to blur the lines between sympathy and manipulation, between truth and performance. And as Seth Rollins walks through the curtain, uninjured, with Paul Heyman by his side, the WWE Universe won't know whether to cheer, to boo, or to question everything they thought they knew. But perhaps that's the point. In an era where reality television blends with scripted drama, where breaking kayfabe has become the new kayfabe, Heyman and Rollins are playing a different game. A game of control. A game of narrative architecture. A game where truth isn't what happens, it's what you believe happened. What happens next could shatter trust or elevate WWE storytelling to a legendary new height. Because if the injury was fake, and the clues suggest it was, then we haven't just witnessed a storyline. We've witnessed a masterclass in misdirection, a gambit that leveraged emotion, loyalty, and blind faith to set the stage for one final, explosive return. And now, the countdown to SummerSlam isn't just about titles or match cards. It's about truth. Or the lack of it. As the days wind down to SummerSlam 2025, the atmosphere in WWE is electric, but not in the usual sense. There's a chill in the air, a collective tension that seems to press against the walls of every arena WWE steps into. The roster is walking on eggshells. Promos feel unscripted. Announcers choose their words carefully. And while Solo Sikoa continues to stand tall as the face of SmackDown, fans sense that something bigger is coming. Something no one, not even WWE's top brass, is fully prepared for. That's the exact sensation Paul Heyman wanted to cultivate. A lull before a storm. A perfectly engineered pause before the pulse. Paul Heyman has always been more than a mouthpiece. He's been a manipulator of momentum, a dealer in doubt, and now, an architect of betrayal. If this master plan unfolds as designed, he will not only reintroduce Seth Rollins in jaw-dropping fashion. He will have reshaped the hierarchy of WWE without ever stepping into the ring. And it all began with a lie. The fake knee injury, when stripped to its rawest essence, was not just a tool for sympathy. It was a Trojan horse. It gave Heyman the opportunity to operate in stealth while the rest of the locker room chased smoke. The fans mourned. The wrestlers adapted. Rivalries adjusted. And through it all, Heyman slipped into the silence like a ghost, whispering into the ears of officials, tweaking production schedules, and orchestrating the grandest comeback in recent memory. Every reaction Rollins received in his absence, every hashtag, every podcast eulogy, every sympathetic chant, became fuel. And soon, he'll weaponize all of it. Even now, as WWE executives scramble to finalize the SummerSlam card, they remain strangely vague about the main event structure. Promotional posters highlight Solo Sikoa, Cody Rhodes, and even Gunther, but Seth Rollins is conspicuously absent. Officially, he's still recovering. Unofficially, whispers behind the curtain suggest he never left. One source close to the production team confirmed that a new pyro cue labeled SR Midshowret was uploaded to the event's cue list just 3 days ago. It was flagged as confidential priority, a designation typically reserved for high-profile, last-minute swerves. And then there's the security lockdown. WWE has increased backstage security in the days leading up to SummerSlam, not to protect talent from fans, but to protect secrets from insiders. Paul Heyman has reportedly insisted on a closed set for any Rollins-related rehearsals, allowing only the essential personnel to be present. No cameras. No phones. No leaks. The plan, according to insiders, is to have Rollins arrive at the venue in complete disguise, entering through a private back lot in a nondescript SUV with blacked-out windows. It's theater at its highest level. But the stakes couldn't be more real. Because if this plan fails, if the reveal falls flat, if the audience doesn't erupt, or if fans feel betrayed, it could backfire spectacularly. The risk is enormous. Faking an injury, especially in an era where real injuries end careers, is a dangerous move. Fans are emotionally invested in their favorites, and Rollins is beloved. If the crowd turns on him, if the return is seen as manipulative rather than thrilling, it could damage not only Rollins' reputation, but Heyman's entire creative legacy. But Paul Heyman is banking on something else entirely: emotional whiplash. He wants the audience to feel lied to, and then feel thrilled they were. He wants fans to scream, not because they're angry, but because they've been outsmarted. It's not unlike a magician revealing the trick, except this magician doesn't smile. He lets you sit in the silence, stunned, gasping for answers. That's the Heyman method. And Seth Rollins is the perfect vessel. Rollins has always straddled the line between savior and saboteur. The architect. The messiah. The Joker-like visionary with a wardrobe of chaos and a laugh that masks intent. If anyone could sell a fake injury as gospel truth, then rise from the ashes like a messianic figure cloaked in vengeance, it's him. And in this case, his target is clear. Solo Sikoa has been built as the unstoppable force. The rogue chief. The man who crushed bloodline loyalty and replaced it with fear. But he's also been left unchecked. And that's no accident. Paul Heyman, once the wise man of Roman Reigns, has purposefully let Solo grow louder, darker, and more reckless. Why? Because Heyman needed a monster. A